Hello. Welcome to the first part of the video I've prepared for you on how to get ready for our workshop. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of lecture, and it really is a lecture, and I apologize if it sounds as though I'm a stickler for this, but I am a stickler for this. So you've received your supply list, and on that supply list, you saw Steam 2. If you'll notice, this does not say Steam Light. This is plain says Steam 2. The other thing is that this particular box is a 12-inch and it's a roll. So if you do a lot of collage quilts or you plan on it, you're probably better off getting a roll. But you'll be buying it, depending on the pattern that we're doing at your workshop, it could be 3 to 5 yards, maybe a little bit more. I really want to encourage you not to use Steam 2 Light, Misty Fuse, or any of many different kinds of fusible or fabric fused. And I'll tell you why. Steam 2 Light is an excellent product. I use it myself all the time for applique that I'm going to stitch down all around the edges, whether it be by machine or by hand. So it works really well for that. The needle goes through easily. It isn't too stiffened. And so please understand, Steam 2 Light is a wonderful product, but for this particular type of project, really does not work in the long run. And I'll show you why. Let me get rid of this guy. So this is a sample of the pink pump that I made for a shop I was doing a class, where I was doing a class. And what I decided to do was to use Steam 2 Light. And I'll be honest, I'm kind of one of those people who suspects if I'm told I can only use one particular kind of thing, then I'm gonna maybe try to use something else. So this is a perfect example of why, and this was like the second collage quilt I had ever done. And I went back and took Laura's class in Montana, and she was very specific about the fusible to use in these projects. So, and I like her very much, and I wasn't trying to be defiant, but I just wanted to see. So I did this sample for the class. This was out of town, so I was up at my mom's house at 11 o'clock at night steaming this down, and I'm thinking, if I go in there with this project that isn't stuck down because I use the light, then everything I say is going to be ridiculous. So I pressed and I pressed and I steamed and all the things that you do to make sure that your collage pieces stay where you want them to. So this went into the classroom, it was hanging on the wall. People came by, and as people like to do, they're touching it, they want to feel it. So, it wasn't long till somebody said, "Oh, Janice, you missed, you didn't get this ironed down right here." And so I was, oh no. So we started looking, and people started going, "Wait a minute, this one's not down, and that one is not, nor is that." So, and I see these little pieces pop up. So it was very embarrassing, but it was also one of those serendipity things. So I thought, okay, so I now have a perfect example of why you should not use Steam 2 Light. It just doesn't hold, and this is quilted already, but the way the quilting fell, it didn't hold down the line of that leaf or right on the edge. So consequently, we end up with a project that over time is going to start popping more and more and more. There's another one here. So I know it sounds like I'm being really, but I really am being really, because I want you to love doing this. I want you to love the project that we make. And I just want to make sure that the products you use will help you do that. So Steam-A-Seam 2 only, please, not Steam-A-Seam 2 Lite. So I'm going to pause this video for a minute, and I'm going to get set up so that I can show you what you need to do to get ready for our workshop. Welcome back. We're going to prepare our pieces for collage. And the way that we do that is to apply the Steam-A-Seam 2 to the back side of the fabric pieces you will be using in your collage. I'm using this Steam-A-Seam 2 is 18-inch. It comes in 12, 18, and 24-inch widths. Laura usually recommends the 24-inch because it's probably a little more economical in that you can get more pieces on it. The problem that I had with it is that it was too big for my pressing board, and it seemed like things were always hanging off, which didn't work for me, but feel free to use whatever you'd like in terms of width. So you'll notice here that this paper has peeled off. Steam-A-Seam has one side that releases easier than the other side. And so when you peel it back, you're going to have a surface that has a lot of adhesive that's pulled up from the sticky side. So to avoid having that all over your fingernails and all over everything, I just fold the paper back on itself as I take it out. You can hear the sound it makes when it releases from the glue. And I just pull it back. And what we're doing is building workable pieces for pressing. And a workable piece for me is about maybe 18 by 18. Sometimes I do them a little bigger, but it just depends on, you know, as you do it over and over again, you get pretty good at judging, you know, how you're going to put your pieces or where they're going to fit. So this particular one, this piece is a little over 18 inches, and it's nice and crooked, but that's okay because this is going to be used for cuttables. So I'm going to be cutting out the lobsters and the sand dollars and the anchors and using them on my mermaids, octopus, and sea turtles. So there's a lot of different ways that, you know, you can use this, and we don't need to worry about how straight it is. This is the same thing. This will be a piece I use for a cuttable. So as I line it up here, I like to keep it straight here. You'll notice there's a gap right there. That's okay. So that right now, given the pieces, is going to be a workable piece. So what I have are my little scissors here, and these are also Karen K. Buckley scissors with the little serrated edges. I just, you know, I started using them, and now I love them. So I go ahead and I'll cut the Steam-A-Seam 2 right along here. All right. So because we have this spot that's real tacky, when we iron this, that's going to stick to our Teflon mat, which is what we really want to keep our ironing board covered with. But that's okay. It's not very much, and it peels off this really easily. Now, before I press, I'll usually go over the fabric with my hands, hand press it a few times. Then I'm going to turn it over. Some people prefer to leave it up, and then they take another piece of the pressing sheet and put on top and press. You know, that's just too much work for me. So I just turn it over, and I can see the back of it. You see we have little ripples and all kinds of stuff there. So I'm going to take a hot iron. This iron has no steam on right now. Even though it's called Steam-A-Seam, we don't steam it until we're completely finished with our project. So this is a dry iron. And you'll notice that I'm kind of wiggling it, and I'm applying pretty good pressure. The idea is that we want to stick it, obviously, to the fabric. The reason I'm wiggling it is because sometimes you'll get, if you hold it in one place for too long, where these little steam vents are, it'll cause little puckers. You can press them out, but why have to press twice? So I just go all the way, and I wiggle, 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 wiggle and press. Okay, so I didn't do this part because I want to show you, when you first put it, before you iron this, it comes off really easily. And when you pull it back, you can see that most of the, or all of the adhesive is still on the paper side. If you go to this one that I just pressed, and we peel it up, oh, see, there you go. It's still on that side, so I didn't get enough heat. So we're gonna go back. So when I'm talking and doing stuff, I just don't give it enough time. All right, let's try this. Oh yeah, now it's gonna stick. All right, so now the sticky is on the fabric and the paper is smooth. So when it sticks, it's a good idea to check and make sure that your adhesive is staying on the fabric and not getting, you know, if it's still on the paper, you just need to press more. So we'll go back here, and I will do this other piece. You can also see that the color changes where it, where the glue is melting. I think you can see that in there. Yeah. So that gives you a good idea too that you're getting it stuck along the edges. So what you're going to do before you come to class, all of your fabric pieces need to be fused to your Steam-A-Seam. Our goal is to get as much done on these projects as we can at the workshop so that you aren't left to go home going, wow, now what am I supposed to do with this thing? So if this prep work is done, it will make things much faster. All right, so this one is done. As we can see, I better check. I better check it. Oops. Yep, there it goes. Smooth on that side. Okay, so when I pick this up, oh, it all came up that time. So this was all that extra that kind of melted in the middle. I'm not going to worry about it because when I trim this up, I'll get rid of that. All right, so we're going to do one more, just so you can see it one more time, rolling up this paper. And sometimes it'll have this paper too. I don't always follow the directions on that because, you know, experience and practice has kind of taught me that some of those things are extra work, and while they may be necessary, I seem to be able to work around them. So, okay, so here's another one. These pieces are really different shaped than the ones we did. So when I line this one up, I can really see how crookedly I cut the edge or the piece, one of the two. So these pieces, this piece and this piece, were each cut 9 inches because I knew I had 18-inch paper, so I have less waste that way. So for the miniatures, if you're doing miniatures, the pieces can be pretty small. It's seldom that you'll need large pieces for those, but you can. So this is another piece that I'll use for cuttables. So this workable piece, as you can see, is somewhat bigger than the other one. And I have this used piece right here. So I'm going to move these. I wanted to show you that by cutting your fabric intentionally based on the width of your steam seam, you can save a little bit. Let's see if this is gonna, yeah, you know, it isn't gonna work because I will lose too much of my fabric. So I'm gonna put it back here. Honestly, these are cuttables also, although it doesn't really look like that makes a lot of sense right now. So I'm not gonna press this whole sheet down and clean it off my pressing sheet. I'm going to cut it off because I can always use it, and I'll just set it aside. And sometimes I'll come across something like, oh, I wish I had done this piece of fabric, and so I'll just grab a scrap and we're good to go. All right, so we'll take that guy off there. Then we're going to trim our paper again. Now this is a little cautionary tale from experience. When you have your pressing sheet down and you're going to cut across, make sure that you're not like, I have several pieces of the Goddess pressing sheet that have been cut in half. I can still use them, but it's just a little disconcerting when I get through cutting and there's a big 2 pieces. All right, so we're gonna turn this guy over, same thing, and we're gonna press it down. So I want you to know that when you're choosing your fabrics for your project, whichever one that you decide to do, if you're doing the minis, then kind of pick your fabrics in terms of the background versus the foreground. So if you're doing, for example, Old Blue, the truck, then you want to, and I've had people do the truck in red or orange or yellow, or some people who've had a truck similar and they'll make it that color. That's fine. Just remember that when you're choosing your fabrics, there needs to be contrast between your main focal object and your background. That doesn't mean the background has to be plain. It just means that it has to read sort of as something that blends in the back. A lot of people when they're starting will just choose neutral fabrics for that with some little pattern to them, and that's strictly up to you. The other thing is on the truck, particularly, if you'll notice, the fenders and different parts of it are different colors. And that gives us that shade and highlight sort of idea. So just keep that in mind. If you're doing the steer, then you want to look at that picture and you see all the different colors. And that's called, Laura calls it her painterly technique. And that is because the way that the little strips of fabric go together, it paints the cow. So you get like the forelock that has the white in the middle and out from the side. So when you're picking your fabrics, keep that in mind. The other thing is you will not need any pieces for the minis or for the teeny tinies larger than this piece. And this particular piece is 11 by about 10. So 11 by 11 is probably as large as you'll need. And that's pretty big. You're better off with lots of small pieces because a collage is just that. We're putting types of fabrics together to give it a certain look. So choosing your fabrics is important, and you want to consider the backgrounds. What are the background of the truck? And not so much the steer. The little fox is the same thing. You know, that particular fox is orange with the red forelock down the, you can make it a black fox or a brown fox, or you could make it look a little more like your dog. The other thing is you need to find fabric that has a lot of things that you think will add interest to your project. So because this is for some of the teeny tinies on with the mermaid and the sea turtle and the octopus, I can use the fish, I can use that sign, Ocean Breeze, to go up in the background. I can cut the snail. And this fabric, just to give you an idea, I'm gonna pause it for 1 second. All right, just to give you an idea so you don't feel so constrained by fabrics or finding things that are cuttable, I want to show you, for example, on this piece of fabric, which really is pretty busy, and you might be going, well, that, I don't know how I could use that as a cuttable. Well, because this is for the ocean, I can go right around this way. Okay, so I could see that maybe as a plant in the ocean. I would probably cut that top part off, go around that little dot so it looks like the top of the plant. On the bottom, I might just cut it off. And then when it's on the piece on the bottom, it looks like a sea plant growing up. It could also be a fish. If you left this part, did something else with the fin, it could be a fish. So cuttables are really what make your piece unique. So really think about that when you're looking through your fabric stash and deciding what you're going to use. Let me show you on. Now normally what you would do when you have finished this pressing, when you go to your cutting table and you're going to cut this off right on the edge, and you're going to trim these pieces up. Because these are cuttables, it's not that important, but if it were a piece I was using for the background, I'd want to square it up and make sure that it was cut really straight, because it'll piece much better on the project then. But because these are cuttables, one of the things that I wanted to show you is that when Laura does cuttables, she usually leaves, I'm just getting a piece off, she'll leave quite a big piece of the border, not the border, the background around the piece. So for example, in looking at this particular piece, and she's thinking, well, I want to use that flower. Yeah, so she might go and trim around it, leaving part of the background. And we'll pick up the leaf and we'll go down here and just kind of cut that off. And there it is. So when that is on your collage, it doesn't look like part of a flower. It might be, this part of it might be coming out from another flower. Now, there are times when I'm cutting flowers that the background does not lend itself color-wise to what I'm doing. So in those cases, I cut them pretty close. So you'll always need more cuttables than you think you'll need. So when you get these fused, I suggest you sit down and have some fun and just cut so that when you come to class, they're ready. It's not, I mean, if you don't get that part done, don't worry about it. We'll have time to do it in class. So for this one, let's see, I needed to get rid of all that blue. Probably come around this way and just take off the flower like that. You know, that cutting you've been doing since you were a little girl. So that part of it is kind of up to you. One of the things I really like to stress though is that sometimes people will look at a piece of fabric like this and they'll say, well, I can't use that flower because it's partly gone. Well, this one it is. Let's go back over to this one right here. So if you look at this, you say, oh, can't use that flower. Well, you can, because all you're gonna do is cut it out real quickly, kind of loose. Now, this flower might be on the edge of your canvas or the edge of your little quilt. It could be right on the edge, could be tucked under another flower, could be tucked under the edge of the truck. So don't discard anything because there are pieces of it. You can use just about everything, even, just the leaves. So just remember, you're going to need a lot more of these than you think, because even though it's a small piece we're doing, it needs a lot of interest. So one of the things you'll hear me say a lot is that the thing that makes collage so interesting and fun is that everywhere you look on your project, something catches your eye. It might be a word you put in, it could be anything. And so the idea that you have the truck in the foreground and in the background and you don't put all that other stuff on there is okay, but you're sort of losing the point of collage, which is to make it really interesting and visually moving all the time. So I hope this gets you guys started so that when we get to the workshop, we can get busy and get these beautiful projects done. If you have any questions, you can check with your guild representative who's scheduled, and they know how to get in touch with me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to working with you.